South Africa's political scene is never dull. One of the most talked about groups is the Economic Freedom Fighters, or EFF. You probably know them by their signature red berets and overalls. They burst onto the scene in 2013, led by the charismatic and often controversial Julius Malema. He was once the leader of the ANC Youth League, the ruling party's youth wing, but after some disagreements, shall we say, he went on to form the EFF. Their style is confrontational. They are not afraid to make some noise in Parliament or on the streets. They see themselves as champions of the poor and marginalised. The EFF has some pretty bold ideas. Their main goal? Economic freedom in our lifetime. That's a big promise. They advocate for the nationalisation of mines, banks and other key sectors of the economy. They also want free quality education, healthcare and housing for all South Africans. Think of it as a massive shake-up of the system. They argue that political freedom achieved in 1994 means little without economic power for the black majority. So they are pushing for what they call the second phase of liberation, economic liberation. It's a message that resonates with many. So, who exactly is listening to the EFF's message? Their support base is largely made up of young, black South Africans. Many of these are people who feel left out of the economic progress since apartheid ended. They face high unemployment and deep inequality. They see the EFF as a radical alternative to the established political parties. For them, Julius Malema's fiery speeches aren't just noise, they're a voice articulating their frustrations and their hopes for a more equitable future. They believe the EFF is fighting their corner. Despite being an opposition party, the EFF wields considerable influence. They are the third largest party in Parliament. Their presence ensures certain issues cannot be ignored. Land reform is a prime example. The EFF has consistently pushed the African National Congress ANC government to take more decisive action. This pressure has contributed to recent developments, like the parliamentary approval on May 24, 2025, for a report endorsing a constitutional amendment. This amendment would explicitly allow for land expropriation without compensation. The Red Berets are definitely making their mark on policy debates. To understand the land debate in South Africa, you have to understand apartheid. It wasn't just about separate schools or park benches, it was a brutal system of racial segregation and oppression. A key part of this system was the systematic dispossession of land from the black majority. Through laws like the Natives Land Act of 1913, black South Africans were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands. This land was then reserved for the white minority. This wasn't just an injustice, it was the theft of livelihoods, wealth and heritage for millions of people. The statistics, even today, paint a stark picture. Decades after apartheid officially ended in 1994, the patterns of land ownership still reflect that era. A government land audit in 2017 revealed that white South Africans, who make up less than 10% of the population, owned about 72% of the country's agricultural land. In contrast, black South Africans, the vast majority, owned a mere 4%. These numbers are not just historical footnotes. They represent an ongoing economic imbalance that shapes everyday life and fuels much of the current political tension. This skewed land ownership is a direct cause of the deep economic inequality that plagues South Africa. Land isn't just dirt, it's a primary source of wealth, a means of production, and a foundation for economic opportunity. If you systematically deny a majority of the population access to land, you systematically entrench poverty and disadvantage. This is the reality many black South Africans continue to face. The promise of a rainbow nation feels hollow to those still grappling with the economic legacy of being dispossessed and marginalized for generations. After 1994, the new democratic government did try to address land inequality. The primary policy was based on a willing buyer, willing seller principle. The government would buy land from white owners who were willing to sell and then redistribute it. However, this process proved to be incredibly slow and very expensive. Critics argue it barely scratched the surface of the problem. The slow pace of reform led to widespread frustration and impatience. This created a fertile ground for more radical proposals like those championed by the EFF, who argue that more drastic measures are needed. At the heart of the EFF's platform is the policy of expropriation of land without compensation, often called EWC. Their argument is straightforward. The land was stolen during colonialism and apartheid, so the state should not have to pay to get it back. They propose that all land should be placed under the custodianship of the state. Then the state would redistribute it equitably, prioritizing black South Africans for residential, agricultural, and industrial purposes. The EFF says this is about achieving justice and economic emancipation, not about revenge against white landowners. It's a fundamental pillar of their ideology. This policy isn't just talk. In December 2024, South Africa's new expropriation bill was signed into law. This bill allows for nil compensation in specific cases of land expropriation. These cases include land that is unused, abandoned, or held purely for speculative purposes. President Cyril Ramaphosa described it as a constitutionally sound tool for equitable land access, not a populist measure. However, this move has certainly intensified the debate and raised alarms in some quarters, paving the way for more heated discussions on land ownership. Naturally, the idea of EWC has sparked significant criticism and fear. Many white landowners, business groups, and international observers worry about the potential consequences. They fear it could lead to widespread confiscation of property without fair compensation, undermining property rights, which are a cornerstone of most economies. There are concerns that such a policy could scare off investors, both local and foreign. This could destabilize the economy, leading to job losses and even food insecurity. Comparisons are often drawn to Zimbabwe's land reform program, though the EFF insists its approach would be different and more orderly. The push for EWC and the new expropriation bill face strong domestic opposition. The Democratic Alliance, DA, the main opposition party, is challenging the constitutionality of the expropriation bill in court. They have also vowed to fight the proposed constitutional amendment that would more explicitly allow for EWC, following the Parliamentary Committee report's approval in May 2025. On the other hand, groups like AfriForum, which largely represents white Afrikaners, had their legal challenge against that parliamentary report rejected by the High Court even before its recent approval. The legal battles are far from over. One of the most contentious issues surrounding the EFF is the Kill the Boer song. Boer is an Afrikaans word for farmer, often referring to white Afrikaner farmers. Julius Malema frequently leads this chant at EFF rallies. The party defends it as an old anti-apartheid struggle song. They say it's not a literal call to violence against white farmers today. South Africa's Equality Court even ruled in 2022 that in its historical context, the song does not constitute hate speech. However, for many white South Africans and critics globally, the song is seen as deeply offensive and an incitement to violence. Julius Malema himself is no stranger to provocative language. He has made numerous public statements that critics condemn as promoting racial division and animosity. For instance, comments about cutting the throat of whiteness have drawn widespread condemnation. The EFF and its supporters often argue that Malema is simply speaking uncomfortable truths about ongoing racial inequality and challenging what they term white monopoly capital. They see his rhetoric as a necessary tool to awaken consciousness and demand radical change, but it undeniably fuels fears and deepens societal divisions. The EFF's rhetoric and policies have also attracted international attention and criticism. Recently, in March 2025, tech billionaire Elon Musk who grew up in South Africa, accused the South African government of promoting white genocide and shared footage of an EFF rally featuring the Kill the Boer chant. Following the signing of the expropriation bill, the United States under former President Trump reportedly cut $440 million in aid, citing concerns over property rights. South African officials have largely dismissed these external criticisms, asserting their commitment to constitutionalism and lawful reform processes. In their defense, the EFF maintains that its policies are fundamentally about achieving justice and equality for black South Africans. They argue that true economic freedom is impossible without addressing the historical injustices of land dispossession and the continued concentration of wealth. They state their aim is not to expel white people, but to reclaim land and resources for the benefit of the marginalized majority. The debate over land, race, and the EFF's role is incredibly complex and emotional. It touches upon South Africa's painful past and its uncertain future, making the path forward a difficult one to navigate for everyone involved.